This is the MLA Lecture for students at Missouri State University West Plains. You'll notice that at the top here it's got a new and improved sticky, and that's because this is going to talk about Modern Language Association Format 8 edition, which came out in the summer of 2016. So MLA format is a fairly plain format. There isn't a title page. So the first page of the essay is the first page of the essay. There's an example here on the left-hand side. You'll notice has basic information on the left-hand side. The title is plain text. It's not underlined or bold or in a different font or bigger than the rest of the text. It's just plain. You'll notice on the upper right-hand side and the heading is the student's last name and then the page number. A lot of times students wonder, well, what do I cite? And so the short answer is, if it didn't come out of your own head initially, you want to cite it. Also, to add to that, probably anything that is a direct quote, anything that is a number, a statistic, a date, those are all dead giveaways. This is somebody else's idea, and so you want to cite that as well. In the world of citation, there are two kinds, in-text and bibliographic citation, and students have to do both. So when you are first writing your essay, you want to introduce your information, especially the first time you use a source. All right, this does a couple of things for you. As the reader, this tells the reader that you, as the writer, have done your research and that you have found good sources to talk about your research. All right, and so to do that, you want to include a signal phrase or an identifying tag, same thing. And so I've given you a couple of examples. So here's one. According to Paul Campos, so here's your author's name. In the book, The Diet Myth, so here's the title of the book. And then this last part is the main idea of what the book is about. All right, another example here, you have the article title. All right, here's your title of the article. By whom, here's your author, and then again, what it's about. The other thing that this does by including this information is it reflects their glory upon you, because you, as a good student, of course, have found good sources, which then makes you more credible. So that's why you want to include introductory information for your sources. On a more practical note, students usually like including signal phrases because, wow, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 extra words that a student could put in to make their paper just that little bit longer. So for in-text citations, you need to include the author and the page number where that information was found. Right, those are the two main requirements for an in-text citation in MLA format. So if you have a signal phrase, right, then there's your signal phrase, then all you need at the end is your page number. But maybe you've used this source three times, then maybe you don't want to say according to Tim Cravens, according to Tim Cravens, according to Tim Cravens. You can just use the quote and then Cravens 3. Right. Do note, websites do not have page numbers. Even though at the bottom it says 1 out of 3, that just means that when you've printed this out, it came out of 3 pages. But if you had increased the size of the type, it could have been like page 1 out of 12. So make sure that you don't include page numbers for websites. Just use a signal phrase to indicate your author and then leave it away. A little bit more things about in-text citations. First of all, you want to paraphrase your long quotes, and you want to really paraphrase about 70% of your research. That's just good writing. It makes it sound like you wrote it, not like a bunch of different people wrote it. And every writing has a little bit of a different voice, and if you just sort of cram together a lot of different voices, it sounds a little bit like a teenage boy, and the voice cracks, except reading it. So save your quotes for when the expert's voice needs to be heard. Paraphrase most of what you have into your own words and still cite your work. Now here's an example of quoted versus paraphrase. So here's the entire quote on the left, and then this is the same sort of ideas on the right-hand side, written in much shorter form. You want to do as much of this as you can. Students, as a general rule, can write it better than the original. All right, some last thoughts about plagiarism. If you take your information word for word, you need to put that information in quotation marks. That's what these little marks are. They're in quotation marks, right? And you need to include the author and page number where you found that quote. So quotation marks and citation. If you paraphrase your information, so you've put that information in your own words, you still need to cite that. You still need to include the author and the page number where you found that information. All right. Without citation or without quotation marks, what you've written is considered plagiarism, and students really, really want to avoid that plagiarism label. All right, so let's move on to bibliographic citation. That's the citation at the end of your text that has all the information that any reader would need in order to find your original sourcing. All right, so bibliographic citations should be in alphabetical order by last name. They are formatted in a hanging indent, which means that the first line goes all the way across, and then any further lines are indented below that. And bibliographic citations have some similarities to each other, but depending on the kind of source, they do change a little bit. So here's some examples. So I've given you book, newspaper, magazine, journal, an article, and a website. All right, you'll notice that in all of them, the author's last name, comma, first name is first. All right. In a book, the next thing is the title, but in a newspaper, the article title is first. Now you'll notice this is in quotation marks. That's because, again, the quotation marks right here indicate that what's here is a smaller piece of a larger whole. So this is the title of the article. This article is a small piece of the entire newspaper. Okay, you'll notice that the title of the book, the title of the newspaper, title of the magazine, title of the site are all italicized. All right, so source material is italicized. All right, and then it wants who published it here, year it was published for the book, and then for your newspapers, when it was published and the page number where you found that information. All right, and again, in an article on a website, then it wants the URL. Now websites are a little bit more tricky for students, and especially because students want to use websites almost exclusively, way much more than teachers want them to. Teachers really want you to print, use print sources because we want to help you be more successful, and we know that you're going to get in trouble with web sources. All right, but if you're going to use a web source, make sure that you do it correctly. All right, so sometimes your author is not a name, it is a group. All right, it's a corporate sponsor, a corporate author, all right, like the Associated Press. All right, here's your article title, it's in quotation marks. Where did you get it from? Here's your source, Yahoo News, when, and then here's your URL. Now, websites, one of the reasons teachers want you to find more print sources is because sometimes it's hard to find citation information on a website because some people aren't thinking, gosh, little Miss Susie Johnson is going to one day want to use this source, and so I better make sure I include all the bibliographic citation, because people are jerks like that. So sometimes you can go to the home page of the site and find your author and the date updated, but if you can't, sometimes you just don't have all the information. And so if you don't have an author, skip it. Start with the article title. If you don't have the date that an article was updated or uploaded, then what you want to do is after your URL, write the word accessed and then include the day, the month, and the year. So like 9 January 2017 after the URL. Another step in the citation arsenal here is the annotated bibliography. And a lot of times students really sort of fight an annotated bibliography because they don't see the value of it. But what it does is it helps you organize your research, especially for a long research paper. All right, and so instead of having a big stack of books or articles on your desk that you have to just keep going through to find the exact right quote or the exact right information, you can keep that together in your bibliography and then move it to where you need it to be in your text. All right, so it's a summary of your information, the notes about your sourcings, and it also adds your citation as you're going through. So an annotated bibliography example looks like this. So here's your citation, okay? And then here is sort of the summary, and then the last sentence is whether or not it's usable. And so you want to do this, especially for long sources, to help you keep your information together. All right, and lastly, I'm giving you a student practice. All the information here is information you will need in order to put together a quote, an in-text citation, and the works cited citation. All right, so you have your title here, you have your page number, you have publisher, you have your years, you have your quotes, you have your author, you have all the information you need to help you be successful in putting together your information. The end.